Hello, everybody, and welcome to our second episode of my Analyze the companion characters of the Dragon Age The Veilguard game. Here I am joined with a brand new guest, Micah. Micah, could you please introduce yourself, where they might have seen you from my channel, and as little or as much as you would like to tell everyone?
Well, thank you, Hark. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. I'm Micah, because who
Who
else
else
would
would
I
it
be?
be?
You might know me from some programs such as, just kidding, no. I was once in one of Hark's brilliant tabletop campaigns, the Athenaeum tabletop campaign, where I played as Star. And I had so much fun. I also do have my own channel called Micah Let's Play. I do all kind of, I'm more like a variety Let's Player. So I have like several Let's Plays going on right now. So just get in where you fit in and have fun. So yeah, I've met Hark. He's awesome. If you don't know who he is, what's wrong with you? Right, right. So we're here to talk about some Dragon Age. We have some good stuff in store for you. So with that said, I'm going to let Hark do his thing.
Thank you so much, Micah. Why don't I actually start by asking you, which character are we going to analyze today?
We're going to be talking about my new favorite obsession, Davrin and San.
Yes, Davrin. Yes, and the San. That's very important. So,
Right?
basic rundown of Davrin. I don't think we've actually been given a last name for Davrin. I don't
He's like
remember if
Beyonce.
he came from the Dalish, if I remember correctly. So I don't know if the
Mm-hmm.
Dalish have last names per se. So that makes a lot of sense. But Davrin represents the Grey Warden faction, who Rook can be affiliated with if you so choose in your backstory.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Davrin is a warrior. He is written by John Dombrow. And by the way, just as a appended item here, because I had already released the Lace Harding analysis video, and I failed to mention in that video that Lace was written by Cheryl Chi. So, um,
Ooh, okay.
yes. So, and I think Cheryl Chi had written, if I remember correctly, I think she was involved in a bunch of other um, projects with BioWare, if I'm not mistaken. But at any rate, Davrin was written, like I said, by John Dombrow, and he was voiced, or is voiced, by Ike Amadi. And Mr. Amadi has voiced several characters himself, in addition to Marvin Martian
Mm-hmm.
from the DC Comics video games, a couple of them at least, and for those of you who are Mass Effect fans, he was the voice of Javik from
Yes.
Mass Effect 3, which is really awesome. So I'm really curious to see, or hear rather, how he's going to voice Davrin, how different. I'm assuming he's not going to have, I guess, Prothean accent. It's not
Yeah, the pros.
Rican, it's Prothean accent. So it'll be really interesting by that. But before we dive headfirst into the analysis, Micah, you actually specifically selected Davrin as the person you wanted to analyze. Can you explain to us, like, why? Why did you pick Davrin of all the other companions?
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. It was really hard
Mm-hmm.
because this time around, all of the companions are really cool. But Davrin stuck out to me because one, we've never had a black elf.
Yes.
That shocked me when I first
Yes.
saw it. I was like, a black elf?
Yes.
What? And it
Yes.
was, how do I put this? Like, it was almost like I guess if I was like in a movie, it'd be like, like what the
Right.
fuck.
Right.
So when I saw that, one, it was cool. Two, he was a Grey Warden, and since just so you guys know, fake fan, I never played Origin, so I never experienced the hero of Ferelden as me playing it. I watched Hark's Let's Play.
Okay.
So the fact that he was a warden, the fact that he was a black elf, and he had a griffin,
Yeah.
since we're gonna be talking more about that,
Yes.
those things just really stuck out to me, and I was just like, I want to know everything about this man. And on top
Yeah.
of that, he's cute, he's sexual chocolate. How can we
Yes.
not love
I
him?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I am, now that you mention it, and again, this is just like I guess what it means to have certain racial privileges.
Yeah.
I am now noticing that when you look at most of the Dalish clan members, I feel like essentially all of the Dalish clan members were lily white throughout the
Yeah.
games, and so I'm wondering if they actually address that, if they give some sort of lore explanation, like, hey, I come from the clan here where we actually have more, black skin toned elves, Dalish elves. Like, I don't know if that ever
Right.
gets. I'm curious if it gets addressed or they just aren't even going to mention it. I don't know if you have a preference one way or another. If they even bother to mention it or if they do address it. Like, I'm curious what your thoughts of that are, Micah.
Well, what I think they might do, they may not necessarily address it
Mm-hmm.
because think about it. We're in Northern Theta, so White's Help, and then just over on the other side is Ravane.
Mm-hmm.
Hence, what's behind me.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about it that way, that might make sense.
Yeah.
Someone might have saw a very beautiful Ravanian and been like, let's
Oh.
talk, and then
Okay.
ta-da, Davrin was born. So that's what I'm thinking, but I could be horribly wrong.
Interesting.
And
Huh.
yet they could not say anything.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I now that you mention it, I think that makes a lot of sense. So I'm gonna pull back a little bit and let you sort of drive this conversation, Micah, if there's any direction you wanna talk about further with Davrin.
Okay. Yeah, one thing, like I said earlier, since I never actually played as the hero for Relden, this is
Mm.
my first time actually getting a game outside of Inquisition where we're seeing the Grey Wardens almost being put back in a position of strength. Because if you guys played Origins and then played DA2, in DA2 they were rarely around. And there was that one thing where the Canaries invaded, oh god, they invaded, I think it was like Lowtown or something, when you were in Kirkwall. And you get the Wardens there because I remember your brother shows up, and I think Alistair shows up, and it's like 5 seconds, and then they're gone. And then there was this whole mystery of what's going on with the Wardens.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to Inquisition, and after you have built up the Grey Wardens to be these champion of the people and the protectors of the Blight, then you see how far they fall when you start doing the Warden's quest, when you learn about, I forget what the Warden's name was, the sorceress.
Blackwall.
Yeah,
Oh,
Blackwall. And
Blackwall.
then, Blackwall, we'll touch on him,
Okay.
but it's when you're in the camp and you run into the blood mage with the mustache and he's manipulating them through Corypheus,
Mm.
and you kind of learn that the wardens are actually a liability. Yes, in the words of Sarah, they're a
Yes.
good thing to let you know a bad thing is coming, but they're also a liability. And then if you played like the DLC, again, this is how I watch those Let's Plays. But when you watch the DLC and you see what happens with Hawk, when you learn about Hawk's father and his ties with the Warden,
Yes.
and you're understanding now what's happening in the game. Like, if you don't know what's going on, we're going to avoid talking about those spoilers. But if you are aware of what's happening, it makes you kind of nervous for the Grey Wardens and for Davrin, because will he become a liability? Although it looks like it's setting them, like I said, setting them back up to be like a good thing, a champion of the people. And I'm excited to kind of dive in that arena,
Sure.
and experience the Grey Wardens, I guess now from a better perspective than what we got
Mm.
with Inquisition,
Yeah.
because it just seemed really sad what was happening to them. But what do you think about that, Hark?
I really would love to learn more about what do the wardens do or worry about when there isn't a
Yeah,
blight, because it just seems
exactly.
like they're you're at least in the first game your understanding is the wardens are there when a blight is around and they're supposed to help deal with that, and then I guess in the off season they're just getting rid of whatever excess darkspawn there might be until
Right.
they are about to die, at which point they go down to the deep roads and they valiantly fight off as many darkspawn that they can until their death. And so
Yeah.
I really wanted to learn a lot more about the Grey Wardens, especially by actually experiencing Weishaupt
Yes.
specifically. I feel like the game has been hinting. They have never officially stated that we're going to be going to Weishaupt, but it's been heavily implied that Weishaupt is going to be a place we will end up visiting. Since Davrin is supposed to be our companion, I feel like that makes total sense. I'm curious if he specifically is from Weishaupt, or if
Mm.
I don't know if he actually has ever been to Weishaupt before. I don't know if just because you're warden, is it implied that you actually end up in Weishaupt eventually, because that's sort of like their home base, their HQ. I don't know. There's a lot of things about the Grey Wardens that I think is very curious, and I think for the people who choose for Hawk to be a Grey Warden, it sort of
Yeah.
is a callback to when you
Yeah.
were a Grey Warden in Dragon Age Origins, which I know is very appealing for a lot of people. So I find it really interesting that even now, 3 games later, the Grey Wardens are still part of the story.
Yeah.
And yeah, like that's some of my reactions, at least in terms of um, Davrin's affiliation. So.
Yeah. But another thing that also has me like, and this is what drew me to this character so much, is kind of like the lore around the Grey Wardens, like when you understand the joining and all that stuff. And then Griffins,
Yes.
when you think about the
Yes.
Griffins, that is like
Yes.
one of the biggest things about them, especially if you read the book The Last Flight, which I know
Yes.
Hark knows more about than me. But there are some things in there when you see a sign, and if you read The Last Flight, it gets you really excited. So with that said, Hark, fill me in, help me out.
I'm just going to I think it's easiest for me to just again read word for word the summary that's on the Dragon Age wiki about the
Mhm.
events of the last flight, and it's
Yeah.
during that time that we learn what the true cause of the Griffins going extinct was. So it
Hmm.
says the true cause of the Griffins dying out was a modified version of the joining ritual created by the Grey Warden mage Isaiah, I think that's how you pronounce
Hmm.
her name, through blood magic. The ritual was originally created as an attempt to render a griffin immune to the Darkspawn. Makes a lot of sense. Immune to the Darkspawn taint, as the Wardens were. After being put through the ritual, the Griffins were capable of greater strength and speed. Their endurance greatly increased, rendering them capable of fighting on even after sustaining major wounds. It's also greatly increased their aggression, however.
Hmm.
Tainted Griffins would attack Darkspawn on sight unless controlled using blood magic. However, because the taint was processed too quickly in their bodies, any griffin put through the ritual died not long after.
Yeah.
So they were basically experiment like guinea pig test subjects. Um, and I'm sure there was a lot of moral arguments you can make about that.
Oh yeah.
If the ends defy the means, because of course they're doing this for the blight, they're doing this for the good of the
Right.
world, etc.
Exactly.
Um, in their most desperate moments during the Fourth Blight, the Wardens subjected dying or aging griffins to the ritual to make them useful during one last endeavor. The Tainted
Hmm.
Griffins were particularly useful during the Battle of Aeslay, where the Archdemon Doral was finally struck dead by Garahel, if people remember
Mm.
Garahel. Unfortunately, the modified taint became contagious and eventually infected unjoined griffins, causing
Yep.
the whole species to become uncontrollably aggressive, even towards their handlers. So the first warden was eventually forced to give the order that any griffin showing signs of such aggression was to be killed.
Yeah.
So basically, they've got the little whatever, like little mind flayer worm in them, and
Yeah.
yeah, essentially, unbeknownst unbeknownst to the rest of the order, Isaiah retrieved a clutch of 13 griffin eggs, fathered
Hmm.
by Garahel's griffin, Crooky Tail. I love that name, and,
Aw.
and somehow managed to purify them of the taint. Feeling that the wardens had failed the griffins, she chose to place them in a form of arcane suspended animation until
Mm.
the tainted griffins died out and the wardens had a chance to appreciate the depth of their loss.
Yeah.
Then, in 942 Dragon, a Grey Warden recruit named Valia finally located the clutch of eggs and retrieved 13 healthy griffin hatchlings. So I think the implication is that Asan may have been a descendant of
Mm-hmm.
those 13 um, hatchlings. That's my guess. I
Yeah.
don't know if there's anything that has revealed much about how Davrin acquired Asan, which is fine because I would prefer actually learning about that in the game personally.
Yeah. What I do know and what we can hint around is that the BioWare devs, again, Karen and John Epler, have done Q&As, and in that Q&A they did reveal a little bit
Okay,
more, but I'm not going to talk about it here. You need to watch the Q&A for yourself if you want to know.
yeah, but I think it's really awesome, not only because we suddenly have a creature that we thought used to be extinct, like having
Exactly.
a fantastic beast like a griffin back in play,
Exactly.
but it seems like when you have Davrin in your party, um, Asan actually fights alongside of him,
Yeah.
and perhaps I think is involved in some of his special attacks or special abilities. I feel that's my understanding,
Yeah.
and I think that's really cool. It sort of reminds me, for those of you who play Borderlands, I think if
Mm.
I remember Mordecai, I think Mordecai from the first Borderlands had a hawk or a bird that would like
Yeah.
um, attack enemies as part of his special abilities. So I'm curious if it's going to be similar to that. I don't know if you
Mm.
want to respond or weigh in on that at all, Micah.
I will. What makes it interesting when you mention Mordecai, because
Mm-hmm.
recently BioWare has released concept art of the companions, and in
Mm.
one of the images you actually do see Davrin with a hawk on his
Oh,
wrist. So I'm
interesting.
like, maybe
Okay.
there might be some connection there. We don't
Hmm.
know.
Some
Um,
inspiration. Mm-hmm.
exactly, some
Yeah.
inspiration. But when it comes to the combat, from what we understand, if you haven't seen the very wonderfully done like higher level combat where they had this beautiful female elf fighting, and Davrin was there, you actually do see that is one of his abilities is Asan. I'm not going to tell you what it is because you need to watch it for yourself, but seeing that has me really excited to have him in my party, because even though the devs say you can still choose whomever you want, and they really want us to mix and match our parties constantly. And one thing I got to give Hart credit for, in all of his Let's Plays, that's something he's good at doing. He'll swap out his party members
Yeah.
so everyone kind of has a center stage moment. And in this upcoming game, even though yes, they want us to constantly recycle out, I'm finding it very difficult to find a reason to not have Davrin in my group.
Yeah.
Because one, Asan, and two, because I'm just so fascinated about this character. So yeah, so that is my 2 cents on the combat. Again, if you're purposely staying away from it, stay away from it because there are spoilers in everything we're talking about. Some of them big, some of them small, but I would recommend, if you don't care, go watch it. You will not be disappointed.
One thing I do want to touch a little bit on is Davrin's personality, because
Oh
from what
yes.
I've read in the earlier materials, is he's supposed to
Mm-hmm.
be the charming one, and
Mm-hmm.
so I'm curious what they mean by that. Like charming is
Mm-hmm.
in Alistair being charming, or I guess he was awkwardly
Mm.
charming. Um,
Right.
and the reason I mentioned that is because without like giving away anything spoilerish, I
Mm-hmm.
did learn from a very recent Q&A about some of the dynamics that the companions are going to have with each other. Some companions are going to
Mm.
gel with each other very well, and other characters
Yeah.
are actually going to have a little bit of a rivalry. And
Mm-hmm.
if I remember correctly, I think I think that Davrin is meant to have a rival with one of the other companions. I'm not going to reveal who that is right now, but
Yeah.
but I think that's interesting, um, given what my knee jerk like reaction to his personality was. He's probably going to be the guy that I don't want to call him the Caden Alenko or like
Right.
the Boy Scout. I don't know if he's necessarily the Boy Scout character in your party that everyone seems to get along with. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know nothing about his personality other than he's supposed to be the charming one, and I'm not really sure how to interpret that. But go ahead.
No, I agree with you, but based on what I know, and I got this information from Gilda Tharin and Kala Elizabeth. They did a video together where they kind of talked about their experience. For those of you who don't know, these women were on a council with BioWare, and they play tested the game early before, and that makes me more excited because I trust both of them. If they had got Hark, I would be even more excited because I know him. You know what I'm saying? So I trust their opinion. I trust Hark. So understanding a little bit more about Davrin, one thing that Katie did say is that his personality is sexy because there's a bit of bravado within his charming nature. So when I heard that, I'm like, ding, 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 ding! Like, we have a winner. So one thing what we do know about Davrin is that he's a monster hunter. And he prides himself on being an expert hunter, and if you think about a hunter, my brain immediately goes to a big buff lumberjack with an axe, knowing what he's going to get. He's a man that knows what he wants, and especially when you read about his little background, it says along the lines, he'd rather make history than reflect on it. And I think that ties nicely into what I learned from Katie, what we're learning, and the little bit that we know has me really excited. So that's my way in on that. But what are you gonna say?
I don't know if this is appropriate for me to say, but now that you mention all that, the fact that he is a charming black hunter, he's sort of giving me Will vibes from Baldur's Gate 3. Because Will I found to be a very charming black demon hunter. And so I don't know if there's any inspirations from Baldur's Gate 3. I don't know. Like that's the vibe that I'm getting right now. For all I know, has a completely different personality. But that's sort of where my head is at with that. And if that's the case, I have no problem whatsoever about that.
But the thing about Will, though, Will still had a bit of, even though he knew what he was about, he still had like this very chill, almost calm nature about it.
So maybe not as much vibrato, or what did you call it?
Yeah, vibrato. Yeah. But I don't know. But this guy he's so fascinating. And like, again, if you know about the Wardens and their histories and their taint and their connection to the Blight, and then you think about Davrin, and we finally, again, it alludes that we're going to Whitehall. It just makes him more of appealing as a companion, in my personal opinion. It has nothing to do with him being sexual chocolate, okay? I promise. My thirst has not overruled my judgment.
Well, let's talk about that actually for a moment. His romance specifically, because I was thinking pretty deep about Davrin as in terms of a possible romanceable partner, and I'm keeping my options open still, probably to the beginning of the game. And I was thinking I was thinking about this deeply because if you remember me saying before, I plan on creating a rook who is part of the Morn Watch. The Morn Watch. Thank you. The Morn Watch, and they're all about death or death magic, blah 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 blah. And here you have a Grey Warden who has a very short lifespan. Their lifespan is not very short, so they basically are on not borrowed time, but they definitely realize that their number is going to be up sooner than normal. And so as somebody who could be romancing him, who does have that like affiliation with death, I'm very curious if that's going to be brought up at any point. That was like the first thing that I thought would make a really interesting dynamic between a romanced Davrin and a Morn Watch rook. I don't know.
Oh, I like that. That to me, that oh God. See, okay, guys, if you're not interested in Davrin, hopefully Hark has painted a nice picture for you
Yes,
because
there you go.
that's really exciting.
Yeah,
Because okay, the way I'm gonna play, I'm playing as a Lord of Fortune. I made my
sure.
rook. He's got a big hook. We already know.
Yes.
I'm shameless, y'all.
Yeah.
But see, the way I interpret a potential, like how their romance could possibly go, because I'm also still looking at Neb, like,
Yeah.
mommy is
Yeah.
still working. But still, um, I would say with Davrin, I think because I'm playing as a Lord of Fortune, and also they're bounty hunters and monster hunters. So I was thinking
Yes.
like, now you got these two monster hunters, and there's a maybe it might be a little bit of a rivalmance, and then they start to grow on each other because they're kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know if you guys remember Lord of the Rings when the elf and the I think the human were counting how many enemies they took down.
Yes, I remember that.
I envision their relationship kind of like
Yes.
that, and then it turns
Yes.
into I really like this dude. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So
Yes.
again, I kind of like Hart's explanation better because it makes more sense. It's more beautiful, and it can be very romantic. Like if you look at it in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So yeah. So again, this is why this dude is so interesting. Because we
Yes.
want to know more. Like we need to
Yeah.
know more.
Well,
um,
since we don't know that much, what are your theories? What role, what story beats, what things do
mm,
you think that we're going to be exploring with Davrin during the game itself, during the story itself, or with Asan, or with the Grey Wardens, any of the above?
okay. Well, this is my theory, but I could be terribly wrong. I think that we're gonna meet Davrin at White's house. That's
Mm.
why I think we're gonna meet
Mm.
him.
Okay.
And if you guys remember the amazing release date trailer where you hear Rook say, "I'll be damned, a griffin." So I
Mm.
think when we run into Davrin, we run into Asan first, or maybe
Mm.
we run into Davrin and he's looking for a son. He's like, "Yo, hey, I'm kind of battling these darkspawn. Help me find my friend, and we're good." You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like, I think there might be a way to kind of develop that relationship. Now, when it comes to like an in-game thing, I don't want to say anything spoiler, but it deals with the villains of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
if you understand Origins and the Blight, I think
Yes.
that
Yes.
I think we're gonna either find an answer to the blight,
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
that might be. I'm afraid Davrin's story, because of how the game is set up, he might try to sacrifice himself.
Mm.
What is it in death, valor, or whatever the Wharton saying is. I think we might get some of that with him. So kind of like
Yeah.
a Gale situation with the bomb in his chest, kind of
Mm-hmm.
like that. And we might have to have a high enough relationship with him or a way to talk him out of it, because I think that might be how that his story may end up going.
Yeah.
So those are my theories on
I
him. But what do you think?
yeah. I am always trying to figure out what's the tragic backstory of each of these
Right,
characters. What's their baggage? Because
right.
right now it doesn't feel like he has any, just based on the rare descriptions we have. Because even his
Mhm.
wiki just says, raised in a Dalish clan, Davrin created excitement and adventure with the goal of making history rather than just reflecting on it. He joined
Right.
the Grey Wardens and made a name for himself as a monster hunter. Now he cares for Asan, a young griffin. So, I definitely am with you that I don't know what his tragic backstory or baggage could possibly be, or if
Right.
it's something that doesn't actually get thrust onto him until we get to the events of the game. Just
Yeah.
like Lace Harding, as we have already just talked about, had
Yeah.
certain things thrust upon her that she has to
Mm.
come to terms with, which again I'm not going to get into because of spoiler reasons. So
Right.
so yeah, I am hoping that the main, I'm not gonna call it a gimmick. That's not what it is. But
Right.
I hope that him being the Grey Warden that happens to have a griffin,
Right.
there's got to be more to his character than just that. And I'm sure there will be.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, and and
Yeah.
and I would love to know if he has any ties with the hero Ferelden from Dragon Age Origins, if the hero Ferelden is still alive, or even if he's not, if the hero of Ferelden from the Awakening most likely would still be alive. Because I believe either version of that Grey Warden, you can get a letter from in the Inquisition, in Dragon Age Inquisition. So it'd be neat if there was some sort of mention or reference there, or if there was a reference to Loghain, not Loghain. Well, I mean, Loghain could have been a Grey Warden. Like whoever the Grey Warden was from Dragon Age Inquisition that follows you into that particular arc, because there could be 3. Or Blackwall. Maybe he knew the real. Maybe he knew the real Blackwall.
This is true.
I don't know. So, or really any other Grey Warden that you would have met throughout the games. There's still plenty of them too. It's always fun having the Grey Wardens involved in the Dragon Age storyline for sure.
Yeah, but it's funny that you mention that when it comes to Origins and Awakening. And what makes me think about it is Witch Hunt. If you haven't played the DLC of Witch Hunt, there is something that the Lady Morgan, who is in this game, she comes back. Now, depending on your world status, if you and Morgan joined in a union to create an old god baby, then that might be a thing. But if you didn't, because that's how my world status is, and my world status, the hero Ferelden sacrificed herself. So no Karen for me. But I'm curious because she, in the DLC of Witch Hunt, spoilers, she gives you some information saying, hey, there might be a potential cure to your malady. So I'm wondering, will that play a part in this game? Because again, you know, when you think about the 2 big bads, her being in this game, and once again, the Wardens taking a huge story part, I'm hoping we get some answers to those questions. But that really has me thinking a lot because his backstory, we know nothing about it. But these are so many questions.
I do.
I also want to know just a wee bit more about, since I mentioned him earlier and Hark mentioned him, Blackwall. You know, depending on how your relationship goes with Inquisition, he could either end up leaving, or if he does leave and you bring him back, he may eventually join the Grey Warden. So I'm wondering, will we run into him as well? Like you said, did Davrin actually know the real Blackwall and see, Blackwall show up and be like, who the fuck is this guy?
Yes.
So I'm so curious, and I hope that we do get some answers on the hero Ferelden, because I know so many people, that was their first character, and so many people love the hero Ferelden. Yes. You know, so I'm hoping that we get some of those things tied up in a nice, neat bow. But it feels like we might, but then again, this is Dragon Age. They like to twist the blade just when we don't see it coming.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking it would be kind of interesting if Blackwall survived the events of Dragon Age Inquisition. It would be interesting to see his character in this game as well.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are more cameos from the past games besides Morrigan that are in store for us. And I know, I'm sure Davrin opens up a lot of those possibilities. So.
Hopefully. Oh. And then also, Asana is the cutest. I cannot wait, because this is the in-game mechanic that they shared with us, that we get to hug him, and I can't wait.
Yes. I know we talked about this in one of our other videos, Micah, but I would not be surprised if there was a time jump of some sort, to the point where Asan could turn into a full-grown, or at least more adult griffin that could actually be a mount, for Davrin. That would be really interesting. I feel like if that would be a lost opportunity if it didn't happen either in this game or in a future Dragon Age game.
Yes,
so I'm hoping.
Fingers crossed.
I would love, and again, I would also love for there to be a companion quest that involves the Griffins, and perhaps trying to help repopulate them. Maybe there's a threat that's trying to wipe out the Griffins that managed to survive up to this point. I don't know. I foresee that because I have learned that the writers and the developers have tried to make very meaningful, interesting, impactful companion quests, and it just feels like that's just kind of a given for there to be some sort of Griffin based, like maybe more Asan centric companion. Hey, perhaps maybe by the end of that companion quest you may or may not pair Asan up with a new Griffin friend. Is Asan, have we determined if Asan is a male or female? I don't remember.
I think Asan is a boy. I think he's a male.
Asan is male. Okay. So who knows? We gotta get more Griffins.
Right. We need to repopulate the world because
repopulate the world. Yeah.
Right. And then Angelus, remember, he asked when he wanted to know about those Griffins. Why? I think Angelus would approve.
Why this is not? I know this is not appropriate, but why does my mind immediately think about Final Fantasy VII Chocobo breeding? Look, we want that golden Griffin, so we can get Wardens of the Round. That's it. Right? I want a golden Griffin to be an Easter egg. Just that if I was a BioWare, I would make that as an Easter egg, as a reference to Final Fantasy VII Wardens of the Round ability that you can only get with a golden Griffin after breeding. Oh my god! My goodness, that's terrible.
I know it's a good idea. Why? Because they were inspired about when you look at their leveling up system, they were inspired by Final Fantasy. So I wouldn't be surprised.
The grid. Yes.
The sphere. Yes.
The grid sphere. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Get on it, BioWare. Make it a DLC if you haven't done it already.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Before we close, I wanted to go back one more time to the biggest straw I have about Dragon Age games. That's the romance. So, what do you envision? What do you envision Davrin's romance is going to be like?
That is a very good question. So, I would say, based on what we know, they said that some romances are really steamy and spicy. Some are very light and sweet. But Davrin takes me as a man that, he takes authority. So I think we're gonna have a good time with him. Okay. Personally speaking, because he's charming, he's got this vibrato, and if you flirt with him, he'll be like, "What up? Let's go." For the Wardens, I'm like, hell yeah, I'm hoping we get that. I think we will. But we could
as nature intends for it.
Yes.
Nature intends.
As nature intended. Hell yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my god, I love it. So what about you? What about you?
I'm thinking more along the lines of is this going to be more of a Grey Warden angst kind of romance? I don't think we're gonna get that with Davrin. I don't think so. Is it going to be a more playful romance? I don't know. I'm trying again. I have to figure out what his personality ultimately is. Because for someone like Alistair, for example, I think Alistair was very romantic. It was it was steamy, but it wasn't like shove me up against a tree and start going at it. It was a little bit more tender because even Alistair himself said it was his first time. He had never been with anyone prior to that, and so I don't know if that's. I can kind of see Davrin as maybe being in the same way. I can see him being a virgin, perhaps.
That's
I don't know.
True.
Or he could be like what you said, where he actually is a little more experienced and is able to be a little bit more, dominant about things. Look, I don't know.
One can only hope. One can only hope.
Yeah, and I there's got to be some sort of relationship conflict of some sort. I don't know what that would what that's going to be, because it feels like BioWare always tries to hit you with some sort of, it's not always, amazing in paradise with bunnies
Right.
and ponies the whole time. I'm sure there's going to be some sort of conflict you have to work through with your companion. Maybe it is what you were talking about, the sacrifice, which is very reminiscent of at least two Baldur's Gate 3 characters.
Yeah.
The whole idea of sacrifice. So I don't know. Is it going to be addressed if you're not a warden? If Rook is not a warden, is it going to be addressed that he's not going to be around for very long? Because it certainly was a thing with Blackwall. I think Blackwall even mentioned something along those lines. If you were romancing him, and even that even gets touched on one of the romanceable characters in Mass Effect 2. Not going to spoil which one, but I think people who know the game know what I'm talking about. So I think there's a lot of elements that can be drawn upon for his romance, which I'm very excited for. When I'm sure I ultimately romance him in one of my playthroughs. I don't know if it's going to be my first one, but I feel like I'm going to end up wanting to replay the game as many times as I can to romance as many people as possible. And Davrin's probably going to be up there on my list. So,
right?
Yes. How about you? Any other final thoughts about anything we've talked about, Micah?
Final thoughts. If you were never excited about Dragon Age the Veilguard, I think in this video and the previous one about Harding, I think with Roma, I think there's a lot to be excited about because there's so much to dive into. And more importantly, above anything else, the story of Dragon Age is absolutely amazing. But yeah, that's my 2 cents.
All right. Thank you again so much, Micah, for joining me during this analysis. It was so great to have you. It's so awesome. If you haven't checked out his channel yet, please do. Micah's got a lot of fantastic content that includes the Veilguard recently. He also does a lot of Let's Plays. So please check him out. He's a very entertaining content creator and a very amazing person. Because who else would he be?
Oh. Well, thank you. Well, it takes one to know one. Light attracts light, honey. That's how we get in.
Right. So I'm going to say, until next time, everybody, love yourselves and love each other.
And remember to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. And if you do, more good things will come to you. Remember to live, think, and dream big. And bye. Oh, that was fun.